Welcome to Zagging 101. My name is Guy Danoff. We want to thank you guys as we finish our July series with Zagging 101. Today, we have a very special episode. We're going to be teaching everyone about how to make a show on social media that makes an impact. And if any of you guys know our history, we've now, for MoShape and Missouri Healthy Schools, we now have two shows apiece that we've been running now for close to 16 weeks. And we're here to kind of break down with you, with the people actually who host the show, on a very special panel edition and panel discussion here today. Just to let you guys know, we do record these sessions, but we do not record the live Q&A. We like people to speak freely in those Q&A sessions, but the first part will be recorded today. It will be a panel discussion. So we're really excited to get started with that. Also, Lauren, go ahead, next slide. My name is Guy Danhoff, and not to take up a whole lot of time, you guys can look on the left, the experiences I have. I do work social media for MoShape, Missouri Healthy Schools, and Shape America. I'm also an international author. The textbook is called Health Fitness Management. I write specifically on digital marketing and modern marketing, which includes social media and data analytics. And I'm also an assistant professor of health and sports sciences at Missouri Baptist University. And I teach in the exercise science and in the sport management programs. And I teach mainly marketing, communications, management, those kinds of things. I'm also joined by my co-host, Lauren Krebs, who has just been such a major asset. She's part of CDC funding that Laura will talk about in just a second. And Lauren, always great doing these shows with you. So our panel, let's meet them. The first two from Baker Spot, we're gonna be joined by Megan Baker and Christy Spears. And these are two folks that work in the Belton School District. We're gonna be joined by our state senior nutritionist, Lisa Farmer, who hosts Tasty Tuesday. We're also gonna be joined by Chris Staley, who happens to be a board of director for MoShape, and he also is the host of the MoShape Minute. And we would definitely want to reach out to Kentucky and thank Jamie Sparks for jumping on. Jamie, is, as you guys know, is the past president of Shape America, and he's also become pretty infamous for his pedal pep talks that he currently does 3 days a week. And last but not least is Laura Beckman, and Laura is with Missouri Healthy Schools as she launched Missouri Healthy Kids. And what we'd like to do to kick things off, it's going to kick things over to Laura. And next slide. And Laura, what I'd like to do, because to be honest with you, we're here today in large part based on the vision that you've had. And we now have 4 shows, as I just mentioned, but it really started back with your why a little over 3 years ago. And I was wondering if you could share with the audience, you know, the importance of starting with your why, because we know, as Simon Sinek says in the Golden Circle, people don't buy what you do, but they simply buy why you do it. And I think at this time, I'd like for everyone to hear your why, as you certainly represent DESE.
You bet. Thanks, Guy. Yes, I am the director of Missouri Healthy Schools, and I am located in the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education out of the Office of College and Career Readiness. And this is a CDC-funded position in partnership with Department of Health and Senior Services. Why is this office so important? Because 95% of our 5 to 17-year-old students, children, spend 6 hours a day in school. And schools provide a huge role in developing that intellectual, social, psychological, emotional, and mental well-being and physical well-being of our students. So that's the why, is that we are in our office providing the support and tools to school districts and members of the school community to promote healthy behaviors that also will lead into success of the whole child, the individual in our society that is successful and will achieve. So how did we get started? How did we do what we do? Well, Guy, we met several times, you and I and Tom, at Bread Company, and talked a little bit, had a lot of different initiatives and brainstorming and things going on, but it led to really initially at MoShape 2017 conference, and you had led a session. And I remember sitting in your session and was very intrigued. And I said, Guy, I need to spend some time with you because I wanted to learn more. And me and you sat down for an hour after that session, and I learned more and more. So I said, you know what, we've got to, you and I both agreed, let's keep this conversation going. Well, in spring of 2018, Missouri Healthy Schools began preparing a communication plan. And we brought you in the conversations along with some other marketing partners to begin this communication plan. And for year one, all we wanted to do is build that identity. And this was the sole purpose of increasing engagement for Missouri Healthy Schools and giving that support out to the school community, all stakeholders, whether it be administrators, educators, parents, and members of that community. So at that point, we, in year one, started putting together our brand, our identity. We also came up with a very clear message that resonated with school district personnel and ran it by them. In year 2 through 5, our main goal is let's build this live communication. So that is when we really started bringing you in to become a digital media strategist for Missouri Healthy Schools, along with the huge partnerships that in year 1 through 5, always expanding partnerships. So we believe in that team effort. You cannot do it solely as one organization. You need to lead communication through various team members around the state. So with that said, in fall of 2019, that's when we began to launch our live communication, our new Twitter account, our identity, our messaging. You and I had a conversation of who are the key sessions that we want to hone in on. And we strategized about what types of interviews are we going to hold to really get this messaging out about health and academic success and how we need to bring public health and education together. In spring of 2020, we all experienced COVID, right? And we brought also, let me go back, we brought Lauren Krebs in with the Missouri Coordinated School Health Coalition. So now we have another partner and began teaming with Lauren with the digital media and web page development with that organization, again, collectively bringing together our communication efforts and statewide approach to improving lifestyle behaviors in our children and adolescents. So COVID hit March, second week of March. Our Missouri Healthy Schools leadership team came together and we said, we got to act fast. There no longer is the school hub where everybody comes into the school physical environment. We've lost that, but we need to continue our support for our school districts. Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, content providers began to produce remote learning and specifically talked about how that learning has changed and that it's unique and different in a home-based environment, but also prioritizing the health needs of families, still sticking to that health and education message. So after that, the Missouri Healthy Schools leadership team said, oh my, we've got to now change and really come up with something catchy toward an audience at home. Teachers are parents, and they're teaching other kids, they're teaching their own kids. We're all working from home. What are we gonna do? So we changed to stuck at home recess. And Lisa is part of our Missouri Healthy Schools Department of Health and Senior Services team in that conversation. We quickly then brought all of these different components together, bringing you as the digital media strategist expert on board, Dr. Eric Armbrecht on board at the next meeting, who developed the landing page, talked about the little different components of how this live streaming and then after the fact. And then that continuous engagement, building that engagement and reach. So quickly after that, we had another meeting, brought in Carla Weiss from the Parent Teacher Association, Executive Director, and said, what are your needs? Because we don't want to just do random shows. We want to address the needs and interests of our parents who are now at home. And she quickly confirmed that we were thinking the right things. And we also brought in a lot of experts in the field. We have Lisa, a nutrition expert. We've got the Spaker Spot, who are our physical education, physical activity experts. We have our web page development and digital media experts. We have our Parent Teachers Association bringing us feedback from them. So quickly from there, we began to put together a process of how we were going to develop and deliver these shows. And I gotta tell you, what a great, the people we were all ready to step up to the challenge. It was all new to us. It was the team, it was the trust, it was the relationship building that we developed, and it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun, but it's more than just a professional relationship. We are really, working together and having a lot of fun doing it. Lastly, I would say with our processes, we started putting together a schedule of Monday mornings. Let's meet, let's reflect, let's talk about the show. What is the content? When is the schedule to release pictures to advertise for marketing? When is the schedule for preview of material before we send it out to the audience? And then lastly, making sure that we deliver it, but then always coming back and reflecting on strengths, areas of improvement, and then of course, circling and repeating about the next content. Also during those meetings, brainstorming about catchy things, catchy phrases that might catch the audience, that's tailored to something that might be a national holiday, tailored to a lot of different things that might be happening nationally at that time. So we try to really think and brainstorm from the local level all the way to the national level of ideas. Throughout this process, and I'll just finalize on this note, it's a never ending, it's constantly evolving and transitioning. And so when we hit the ground running in March, we hit the ground running with school closures, remote learning. What are parents dealing with now? It then went into a summer camp. Now we're in summer, schools are out for the summer. Now we're going to address that. And now we're moving into that school reopening. So it's constantly thinking and being ready to, I know everybody gets tired of this word pivot, but that's what we're doing. We're constantly pivoting toward the needs of what's happening at that time. So basically that's sort of how we've evolved, and we continue to evolve. We started with 1 or 2 shows weekly and we were expanding. But I would say the biggest things that I've learned is that the project management behind the scenes, the systems approach that we're putting in place, strategic planning is very important. And building that trust, the relationships, the experts in the field to come and divide and conquer is valuable to success.
Thank you, Laura. So with that, I mean, guys, that backstory needed to be shared so that we could really help you guys understand something. And Laura just said it, guys. One of the greatest keys to our success, whether it's the content shows that we put out on MoShape or on Missouri Healthy Schools, we're highly strategic. And guys, I just want to just say this right now. As I look at other people who try to get into this space, and I don't mean just in this industry, I'm looking across industries, but one of the biggest mistakes people make when they want to do a show is they have what I call, or I've heard some of these other people like Jay Bear say this, he calls it random acts of content. In other words, there's no continuity to the content. People are just putting out, content weekly, but there's no real theme or there's no real planning behind it. Because if you think about it, if you watch a TV show, whatever your favorite TV show is, and I'm just gonna, show my age. Back when I was young, I watched a show called Friends all the time, and so I had a really good idea, what Friends were all about, and so you know what to expect on the show. Just like in Zagging 101, I mean, we're here to teach you how to do things related to social media. First, two main reasons. Number one, we want to improve your influence on social media. But most importantly, and Jamie's definitely going to talk about this, is he's going to talk about the impact that we can be having with our voice through our own shows and even collectively as a nation. So with that, I just want to throw that out there because there's just too many people who think they want to get into space, but it is not having random acts of content. We're very strategic, and when we have to pivot, as Laura said, we do. So with that, Lauren, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so today, since we've had so much success and advocacy and impact with our shows, we really want to prepare you to start your very own show, and that is our objective of today. So, how do you make shows on social media that make an impact? So we're going to start with consistency is key. And just like Guy was saying earlier, TV shows will be on Thursday nights at a certain time, and you know when and where they will be and what theme they will be and what audience they're directed at. And that is the same with your shows that you will be making. You need to create that theme and then stay consistent each week so your audience really can trust into you and know that when you'll be coming on.
The second part, guys, and again, I think you've heard me say this in 4 straight weeks. Those of you who've been on all 4 weeks, repurpose, repurpose, repurpose. I cannot stress enough. If you look at what we did 2 days ago, I got to actually be the host as Lisa Farmer was on vacation. My daughter and her friend did a show on how to cook a sizzling stir fry. But what we did is the very next day, we repurposed the content. We'll be repurposing that content over the weekend because, as I've said repeatedly, guys, you can see 2, 3, and yes, I've seen up to 4 times the views when you repurpose your content. And with that, Lauren, I know you talked about this last week, but give us a little bit more as we talk about, steps 3 and 4.
Yeah, so I'm going to combine these two. So create micro moments. And just for those who weren't there last week, social media now is, it's the brand is where the attention is. So you have to make sure that you guys keep everything as short, almost as short as possible. So what create micro moments is you do this long interview or let's say a very long show, what you do is break it up into a series. And then that way, whenever they'll have a minute or 2 minutes, they'll end up watching it. And that's what the 1-to-8 ratio is actually, that you should repurpose your content up to 8 times. If that's splicing it, if that's putting on a podcast, if that's putting on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you should be repurposing and creating those micro moments within your big show. And I would say as far to say is you're wasting your time if you're not doing that. And Guy, if you want to kind of talk about how to create the video each stage for the audience.
So guys, here's the thing. When you think about doing the show and you think about the content video, is you want to think about you're taking your audience on a journey, just like we've been doing here at Zagging 101 for 4 weeks. The very first starting point has got to be grabbing the attention. In other words, what value are you offering? In other words, what's in it for me? We ask that question all the time. As Laura said, we asked that question with the Missouri PTA as to how we launched Stuck at Home Recess and Stuck at Home Snack shows. Again, it was confirmed by our relationship with the Missouri PTA. So our starting point is you got to be able to grab the attention. The second is making sure that you have now beyond the attention, now going into the real interest. Like today, I just want to say thank you for all of you who've never been on the show before, and this is your first time. I want to say welcome. It means obviously there's something that we have here that's of great interest or value to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. The third thing is conversion. Now, I know that's more of a business term, but think of it this way. Think of it as your own call to action. Different shows have different purposes, which has different calls to action. There's a whole lot of things you can do with that, but again, conversion means that you're converting to some sort of action. And lastly, and I know a lot of people wouldn't think this, but believe it or not, these shows actually can really help with retention. I think of a great example of that as you've looked at all the shows that we're producing and how we have a consistent audience. And why? Because we're delivering value of something that's meaningful and purposeful for them. And the more that they keep sharing it, the more we keep retaining our people. That's why I love all the analytics. And with that, once you go into Lauren, number 6.
Yeah, so this is the insider show, and this is truly just listening to your audience, kind of how Laura was saying that they went to the PTA, asked for a needs analysis, what do you guys need? But I really think on this one, you are not making videos for everyone. I just want to re-emphasize that. You are making for a very special person, and that is your audience. And I think an amazing example of this was Spaker Spot, and I'm going to actually throw it to them because they actually just kind of pivoted their show to do tips on. And if you guys want to kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we started to give our kids a familiar face. And that's what we knew. We knew our students needed a familiar face. And then we were kind of taken under the wing with Missouri Healthy Schools. And it kind of transformed. It transformed into advocacy. It transformed into how can we help our students? How can we help the other professionals do the same thing? And, we've learned a lot from Guy and the whole team there. And we pivoted because we were socially listening. And when we do that, we knew that where it was at was people needed to know what to do with reentry. A lot of professionals can wrap their mind about, planning and activities and modifying. We're really good at that. But it was like, what am I going to do about reentry specific to my building? How do I think through those routines and procedures? And so we pivoted and we got the team together, and that's where we went. So I'll let Christy Spears kind of add to that.
She said everything that I would have said. So, but yeah, we were just listening to our audience and what people were wanting, and they were wanting to know what to expect. And so we were just wanting to be another resource that people can go to.
Thank you so much. And Guy, do you want to kind of end on this last one then?
Yeah, so guys, again, this is all we're going to talk about, Lauren and I. We only have 7 points for you. These are the 7 steps to actually make the show. This is what we followed for all 4 of the shows that we're involved in. It starts with, you got to have patience. And just because you come out on day 1, you just can't expect to hit a grand slam. I'll be honest with you, this takes some patience, but it also takes some persistence and listening to your audience. I call it social listening to what's going on around you and getting that feedback. And here's the other thing, guys. If you're going to get into doing shows, like I can say we've done shows now for over 16 weeks. Yeah, guys, we'll celebrate that on Monday's call. We've done 16 weeks of show after this week. For everyone on this call, that's pretty darn amazing. Considering when we started, most of us had 0 experience doing it. Again, that should encourage everyone on this call who hasn't done a show yet. If you're thinking about doing one, guys, we didn't have experience when we started. Yeah, I had some strategy and had experience in doing live shows before because I had 3 of them. But still not the same thing when you're remote and you can't be with them and you got to teach them how to do and use their own phones to broadcast. That was definitely a challenge at first. And I'm sure Lisa Farmer might add to that in just a few minutes. But here's the thing. Think about your shows as a marathon rather than a sprint. And that's what we've done. And because we've done it, we're now seeing the numbers where I can say any piece of content we put out on any given day now, because we know that we cover right around the 1,000 mark in replay views. And that's a testament to, again, just continue to work the system, continue to be patient and persistent, and also pivoting based on what's going on. I think like yesterday, for example, Spaker Spot, talking about the SEL component, it was amazing what they did in their show. Also talking about ventilation. So the relevancy and the timing of what you're doing couldn't be any better. That's why I tune in every week to the Pedal Pep Talk, 3 days a week with Jamie. He'll talk about that a little bit. And why, guys? Because we're delivering relevant content in real time. And that's a big pivot for all of us and all the people who are representing maybe different states here today. A lot of us have said, we used to be a convention only focused, that was our mission. But the cool part is now we're looking at the needs of our people now in real time. And how can we help our members? How can we help our districts? And how can we help our state dealing with the problems we're all dealing with collectively? So with that, what we're going to do now is opening it up to the panel. So we got some questions that we're going to ask them.
All right. So for our panel, I would like to start off with, how did you create your show's theme or your niche? Lisa, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I was waiting to see if. So I have to say, we had an idea coming in that we wanted to highlight nutrition as part of our Missouri Healthy Schools grant. And so that was where we started. But I need to say that it was really a fantastic group experience. In our meetings, we worked together. I have the nutrition angle. I've been teaching nutrition for over 20 years, but there were a lot of other pieces that our team members brought to the table and helped me focus. The PTA, like Guy said, was an integral part of figuring out where we wanted to take this for our families, because that's where we started. You know, they were at home trying to feed their children and also have activity time, recess, and just juggle everything. So I feel like it evolved through our great conversations and feeling comfortable to bring up any idea, and then also take the advice from everyone on the panel and not feel hurt by that, or
Okay.
you know, to be able to take it, which is a great part of a team. So I'm going to be quiet and let.
Thank
How
you
about,
so much.
how about Speaker Spot?
Well, I actually have to give a shout out to Sean Nevels for us. He found Baker and I, and that's how we kind of became who we are and got more public attention. But Baker and I kind of did this to just kind of fulfill a need. When this all happened for COVID, we were at our spring break. And so Baker and I, we coach together. We also like teach in the same district and everything. And we were like, well, let's just do some videos and provide resources to our students. And then we decided, well, let's come up with our name, and Spears and Baker just put them together, creates Baker Spot. And so creating a tagline was probably the best way that we got a lot of attention. Is all of our videos, you know, our call to action was always bringing your daily dose of physical activity and ending with like, see you next week or see you tomorrow. And I think our personalities really meshed really well. And that's kind of how we are. I don't know if Baker wants to add anything. So.
Yeah, no, that was great. The only thing, I mean, for us, it was really natural, but I think it helps, like, we bring in secondary and elementary into one, which I think kind of made it a little more accessible to a wider range of audience. So that really kind of helped us reach more people too.
Chris.
Yeah, first and foremost, I got to comment, Lauren, that slide is awesome with you pointing at the.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
If anybody, if you don't know me, I'm in the marketing and communications part of MoShape, so I love that stuff. But yeah, so with the MoShape Minute, you know, I actually took over on the board for Guy Danhoff and his position because he moved up. And one thing we talked about when I was just on the committee was a way we wanted to communicate more with what's going on around the state with our members besides just our convention in November and just sending emails. And because in today's society, a lot of people are on Twitter and the Instagrams and the Facebooks and all that on their social media more than their emails. And so the purpose of the MoShape Minute was mainly just to, we wanted to get more content out about what's going on around the state, whether, and like we kind of mentioned earlier with COVID happening in March and then all of a sudden Speaker Spot taking off. And then, you know, we had plenty of opportunities to do interviews. And, you know, originally the plan was, let's just do like a little minute show of just quick highlights, but we've kind of taken it and did more of an interview style of show, which has been great. And I don't know, I guess just the big thing is it's just we like on the Most Shape Minute to get people on the show that are a hot topic at the time. Like our first show included Christy Spears from Spaker Spot, and then, you know, with the back to school and all that stuff, we had Sean Nevels on the show, who represents, you know, PE teachers all around the state at the DESE level. And we've just, I think the theme of the show, it's my guests that I bring on the show, they kind of make the show what it is. And it's just been a pleasure and an honor to be able to interview some of the big people around the state. And for some of you that are in this meeting now, be prepared, because you're probably coming up next, even though you don't like going live, Matt Simmons.
All right, so we got to throw it over to Jamie Sparks. And you know what? This is the perfect example of showing the zag. And Jamie, if you could unmute yourself. And how did you create the niche? Because I see you got the Pedal Pep Talk going. This looks like a special edition.
Special edition. I didn't plan on doing it, but I just turned my camera on a second ago to show the bike, and I was like, well, I might as well get on it if we're going to talk about Pedal Pep Talk, right?
Yep.
This is the first time I'm doing it from this angle, so I've never had to reach over and unmute before, so I'm not used to this setup. But Pedal Pep Talk, man, it was just super organic. It literally started like this. I hopped on the bike one day and turned on Facebook Live and turned on Twitter and just started pedaling. And, you know, we were winding into what was supposed to be Salt Lake City. COVID was happening. And so it was kind of multifaceted. It was personal for me, as I needed it for my own personal health, and just to advocate as a health and PE professional, and to just kind of give I think early on it was supposed to be a voice of reason and calmness, although they've kind of evolved since then a little bit. You know, Mark Fulmer from Illinois, past president up there, Mark was pretty famous for doing treadmill talks, so certainly gave some inspiration from what Mark had done when he was the year he was president in IAFORD. But, you know, and then the other thing about the Pedal Pep Talk concept, I'll give Dan Tennyson credit as well. Dan watched the first one, Midwest Teacher of the Year from Indiana, and he's actually the one that commented in it must be a Twitter. He commented on Twitter and said, #Pedal Pep Talk, and that's how it was born. So there wasn't a lot of strategy behind it. It organically kind of formed, and did that up and through when Salt Lake City was supposed to happen, and then kind of took a break. And I didn't think anybody was listening until a lot of people on this call were like, when are you going to do those again? And so
Yep.
I actually set a schedule and started them back in July, and, you know, did some smart things, like saying it'll be these days at this time, and which I didn't necessarily do the first round. So yeah, very organic, but slowly adding some strategy thanks to Guy.
All right, next question. Jamie, we'll stay right with you. We have to ask this question. Look, I wouldn't be real. I've done over 250 shows in the last 5 years, so I'm with you guys on this one. So, Jamie, what is your best blooper story? I mean, I don't want to just be all serious today, but I'm sure you've had a blunder or two. I was wondering if you mind sharing with our audience, Mr. Pedal Pep Talk, maybe one of your bloopers.
I will say I'm glad that my biggest bloopers not happened on this particular call, because I am pedaling for the first time in flip-flops. So luckily I'm making that work for me. So there's no blooper out of it so far, but stick with me. We're not done yet, so we'll see. I think the biggest live, because the Pedal Pep Talks are usually live. There's a few times I've done them pre-recorded and then uploaded them via video. But actually the biggest closest blooper came, I guess it was on Monday. I almost nosedived into to the Twitter feed. So I did slip, and on Monday it was Volunteer Appreciation Day, and I didn't take notes, and I was very transparent, and forgot to give the shout out to the Health Moves Minds coordinator. So it's the first time I ever did a second Pedal Pep Talk in a day and gave them a shout out. And as I was getting on the bike, I kind of did a nice little nosedive. So it wasn't too tragic, but it could have been a lot worse.
How about Chris?
Yeah, first and foremost, I just became more appreciative of doing the Most Shape Minute, not the Pedal Pep Talk, because I would have been way out of breath right now if I was Jamie. But I think my biggest blooper story would actually probably be our first show. And I brought on Christy Spears from Spaker Spot, and what's the craziest thing about it is I've known Christy for years. I've known her for dang 7 years now, 7-8 years, and we were like best of friends in college and stuff. And so for some reason I was really nervous to interview her, because we're like, okay, let's do this professionally and all that. And it took us about 4 or 5 takes. I forgot to record it once. One of our recordings, it was about a 35-minute interview, and we were talking about memories in college and stuff. I'm like, hold on, we got completely off task. And actually, we sent that one to you, Guy, and you're like, hey, you might want to tweak this, because you guys are kind of. So I think that one, and I did one with Sean Nevels as well. And if you watch the first couple of shows, I always did like a Staley surprise where Guy, I did your graphic, and Chris, I did a video of her dancing in college. But Sean Nevels, I did one where I had a coach that I coached with that also he coached with, send a nice message to him. And when we were recording, Sean started crying, and I thought he was laughing, so I started laughing, and I felt like a big jerk because he was sitting there crying because he was like tears of happiness, and I was sitting there laughing. I'm like, oh, he's crying, so I probably better stop laughing. But I think those are pretty much my 2 biggest bloopers there. So,
All righty, let's go to Speaker Spot.
I just have to say that everything is not always perfect, which is why we do have bloopers. I think the one that I will laugh at the most is whenever we decided to put whipped cream in our faces. And the jerseys was not planned. I do have to say that, because we went through our entire show, and we were done, and we're waiting for Guy to call us, and we didn't get a call, and Guy's like, you have to redo it. And our faces are literally covered in whipped cream. Our shirts are a mess. Baker has whipped cream in her hair. And we're like looking at each other, are you kidding me? And we had went through like the entire live show. And so we didn't bring an extra shirt because we thought that we were only going to have 1 take. And we were telling each other even prior to the show, get this in 1 take because we're putting whipped cream in our faces. So flash forward, we had to do the whole thing again, which led to the jerseys, which turned out really cool. It turned out really well, but it was probably the one that I will continue to laugh at the most. And don't forget to shout out to your sponsors if you do have sponsors on your show, and you have to do that, because I guess I can let Baker know or talk about this one. You're muted.
I got you. I was gonna say the strawberry one was probably the biggest one too. But yeah, so when COVID is there, it also applies to like us. So I have 2 children, and everything that we did and everything that we do, I've also got a 9 and a 6-year-old somewhere out off screen. So that always adds like another level of like stress and like, be quiet, don't say anything, don't fight with each other, do this, do that type of thing. And so I was just like, knew what I was doing in my mind and just went with it, completely forgot to let like Spears say what she was supposed to say, and like just kept like in the zone going for it, and didn't even realize it until the end. So I owe Spears a lot to save us on the back end of that. But yeah.
And Lisa.
Oh gosh. I have a lot of bloopers. I think partially because I have no fear. I will just get an idea and say, oh gosh, let's do this. And I think my most recent blooper was a show I thought was going to be great. I was going to bring my grandson on, who is 15 months, cute, actually helps in the kitchen. So we were going to show, make the PTA proud, show another age helping in the kitchen. But instead of helping, and we'd practice, he did great. The minute we started, shortly after we started, he started screaming, just screaming. And I think, then the tension from his mom holding him and the room, just the screaming got louder and louder. And I also didn't think about where the microphone was, because he was a lot closer to the microphone than we were. And poor Rylan, he was just mortified. And Guy, on the other hand, luckily I couldn't see Guy until I talked with him after, and he said, "Oh my gosh, we didn't have an out plan for you." So one thing to think about, we had not, everything was going to go fine, which is kind of my attitude always. I love going live. I love the spontaneity of being live. But I don't always think through what might happen. So I have learned so much. And Guy, so one of my tips is always have an out. When the baby starts screaming, have an out. And I should have just brought him on set and said, here he is, this cute little, but instead everything just escalated. So that's another great part of having a team and people to talk through things with. So I think
that's great advice, Lisa, because I'm just realizing I didn't plan it out for how to get off this bike, because normally I do panel pep talks at the beginning and then nobody sees the part where I struggle. So now I'm like, how many questions we got left?
We got 3.
I'm super impressed, Jamie. You keep going and you're not out of breath.
And he's in flip-flops. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, hey, panelists, we want to pick up the pace because we really want to get to the audience asking questions. So let's go through a rapid fire. We have 3 questions left. Let's go rapid fire. Lauren, take it away.
All right. So what ways have you found the weekly strategic meetings valuable? And let's start with Speaker Spot on this one.
I think the biggest thing is just to bounce ideas. I mean, it only grows and it only gets better to have more ideas, more creative minds working towards the same common goal. It's profoundly helped. So
having a group to do that with, it's really beneficial. Behind the scenes is where a lot of the action takes place, and in order for you to have the best take or the best show. So
Lisa?
I think those are most of mine. I think also having people with different backgrounds and different viewpoints and things like that. Having Dr. Eric on, he adds a really witty, kind of dry twist to things, and also different ages help. We all look the same age, don't we, Guy? But we are there's a wide variety of ages in our group.
Coming up,
you guys can smile about that.
Hey, why do you think Lauren's my co-host? I look a decade younger just being next to her in the photos. All right, with that, let's go to Chris. Chris?
Yeah.
Weekly meetings.
Yeah, I think with our weekly meetings, I usually do them with Guy. With the Most Shape Minute, we usually have multiple things going on. So we kind of need to look at what is the the biggest piece of information we want to get out so we can host that person, but then also still get the other information out. So for instance, whether it's this coming Monday, we have a very special announcement about one of our board members that's taking on another spot, but we also have other things we want to announce. So that's just the biggest thing for me, is ranking what is most important with your talking points and how you're going to get them out to the audience.
Yeah, great point. And Jamie?
Lauren mentioned earlier timing, shorter does it. We live in a society where there's a flood of information, so the attention span is very small. So I've learned that with I generally will tend to rant or preach or whatever word you want to call it, but you keep it under the 220, it works very well. And then also, depending on your audience and your purpose, I usually have a phone and a laptop, so I'm live streaming to Facebook and Twitter. So depending on your audience, knowing that you're hitting 2 different audiences with the same message.
Yeah. All right, next question. All right, you guys knew this would be coming from me. And Jamie, we're gonna start with you. How do you bring the zag to your live show?
Well, this is a new concept for me, so I'm learning as we go through this. But I think that's part of it. I think part of the zag is just being real and who you are, right? And just being. There is that factor of, I battle this in my full-time job with ETR. As a bigger corporation, they kind of want to plan everything out, in weeks in advance, and that's not the world we live in social media, and certainly not the world we live in social media because of COVID. And so being responsive, I think that just helps to increase the authenticity, although it does also increase possibilities of more bloopers and other things that can happen along the way too.
Yeah, Chris.
Okay, there I go. I think the zag for my show, it's usually just my guests. I'll be honest. I'm a guy says, "Oh, you did great on this," but I give all my credit to my guests on the show. I feel like they're the ones that make the show. I'm kind of there to spotlight them, and so I think that's what's great about the Most Shape Minute. I mean, yeah, you see my face on it every week. Besides the week I'm having a kid, but I think it's just my guests. They bring the zag to the show, and I just kind of let them, kind of like what Jamie said, let the host be themselves or the guests be themselves,
Right.
and show the state and whoever's watching what they're about. So,
Yep. Lisa.
You know, Guy, I would say
go
that
ahead.
his zag could get a little better if he had some Chiefs things in the background rather than the Cowboys. I'm just gonna put that out there.
That's
Well, I
the worst
think-
part, trying to interview with him.
I'm gonna mute myself.
All right, Lisa.
I saw that on your wall, Chris, and I thought, could that really be Cowboys? What is all that? I think how we bring the zag is, once again, are bringing on guests and the children that we work with, and how we, I guess what I hope is how we present cooking and nutrition and what children will and won't eat. All of the recipes that we use are recipes that I teach in my Culinary Skills Institute class, that school nutrition professionals across the state of Missouri have tasted, have enjoyed. Many are serving in schools, and that's my passion, is helping the folks of Missouri understand what children will and won't eat. And so I guess that's kind of a zag. And then just Guy helps me bring the zag. Guy and Lauren both, and well, actually everyone. So thanks, Guy.
Hey, no problem. Before we go to Speaker Spot, I just want to say this. For those of you who are new, don't know what we mean by zag, there's a concept that I learned in my doctoral work that why there's a lot of people out there doing the zig. We want to be the zag. In other words, we want to cut across what everyone else is doing to stand out and really deliver high value so we can increase our influence and our impact on what we do. So a lot of times in our meetings, I'm constantly, when they're throwing out ideas, I said, guys, is that a zig or is that a zag? In other words, we want ideas that zag, and bring this up, Speaker Spot, because I want to give kudos to Christy Spears. When we were thinking about naming this show, she says, well, you talk about be the zag all the time. Why don't you call it Zagging 101? And here we are. So, Speaker gals, how do you guys bring the zag every live show?
Yeah.
Listen to, oh, sorry, Baker.
No, go. I was just gonna say, I think, and she'll probably elaborate a lot more, but I think that we bring the zag because the zag is constantly changing. Like, I think at times Spears and I are the zag. I think it's repurposing one week, it's the content the next week. So I feel like our zag is that the zag is constantly changing. But yeah, Spears, elaborate there.
Well, I do have to say that you have to listen to your audience, I think, the most. And I tell Guy all the time that I'm constantly working, like no matter what, whether it's in a phone call or sleeping, because I woke up at 3:00 in the morning and told Baker I had this great idea for Stuck at Home Recess. And that is where we led. And that is what happened. I said, I'm sorry I'm texting you at 3 a.m., but I had this really good idea and I'll call you tomorrow morning. And so I'm always thinking of what I can do, what next best thing I can bring to my audience. At first, we started with Stuck at Home Recess, which was activities that families can do at home, or, you know, PE teachers can use with their students. And then it leads to now we're answering to professionals and giving them ideas and what they can do going back to school. So I think you just have to constantly be listening to your audience, and don't be afraid to do the crazy idea that you had at 3 a.m. or whatever it is. But I think listening to your audience is the way to go, because whether you have to answer to the people that you are creating your show for.
Absolutely.
To your audience, Christy. Listen to your audience. There you go. Thanks, Christy.
See, now that we would call that in our meeting, that's be the zag. That's the zag right there. All right, last question. Then we're open up to the audience. All right, guys, rapid fire, because I want to get to the audience questions. I know they probably have a few. All right, Lisa, I'm going to start with you. Last question for the panel is, what advice would you give people who are thinking about starting a show, or even those that might even have a show, based on your experience? What advice would you give them?
So I thought about this, and I wrote down a couple things. My first piece of advice, I guess, is just dare to dream. The advice of confidence. Take a chance. Who knows? Find your purpose and your focus and define that. It took me a while to do that. Guy helped me really tighten up my shows. I did a spot on Fox 4 for 16 years as a Fox 4 nutritionist in Kansas City, and it was very easy. I went on, did my thing, left. This was challenging. And so really find your purpose and what is your goal? But then also don't fall into too much of a routine daily plan. So dare to dream and go for it.
Yeah, Chris, how about you?
Yeah, just to echo off that, if you want to do something, just go out and do it. I mean, I think the biggest problem in today's society is people say they want to do things and say, I'm going to do this, but they just don't go out and do it. If your show is to advocate for your program, do it. If your show is to share information about nutrition, do it. Whatever your show's out there for. I mean, we've got 4 different shows represented right now on this panel. And I mean, you've got a show that represents PE activities, one that represents nutrition. Jamie's is more of that inspirational, go get it, boost your, confidence type of show. And then mine, well, I just interview everybody that does those things. So I think just go out, and biggest piece of advice I've learned, if you're going to do a show with interviews, you have to have talking points and you have to share those with your guests before you get them on the show. Because if not, it'll turn into a show like Christy and I's first one, where we had to record 4 times, where you just talk and you kind of lose sight of where you're at. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thanks, Chris. All right, Smaker Spot.
Just do it. Bottom line, because me being a PE teacher, I'm always looking for resources. I'm always trying to network and connect with people who are doing what I'm doing or doing things that I'm not doing. And I think every day you're competing with someone, whether that's another PE teacher, another show. Bottom line, you're always competing with them. But what you do is unique. You are a very unique person to want to even do this. So just do it and don't be afraid. Be yourself, stay true to who you are, your personality, and just do it.
Yeah, so I've had over a decade of teaching experience. We won't say how many exactly, but it was kind of the old dog, can you teach an old dog new tricks? And there were lots of times where I'm like, aren't there people doing this better? Like, aren't there people out there doing it better? And I think it just came down to why. Like Guy always tells us, find your why. And my why was very, very strong, very, very passionate. And I let that why be my driving force to keep going. And knowing in the back of my mind that my students want to see me. They want to see a familiar face. So between that and letting the why drive my passion and my purpose, it's brought out a whole new passion for what we're doing. And it's really been an exciting road. So. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And last but not least, Mr. Pedal Pep Talk himself, Jamie Sparks.
I would just echo a lot of the comments I've heard here on this question. And it really, and to summarize that, it's collective impact, right? We each have a different role and a different why and who we serve, whether it's the national level, whether it's the state level. whether it's the local level. And at the end of the day, you know, there was something very profound that was said to me early on, because as we started this COVID stuff, I had a teacher from Lexington, Kentucky, Billy Noble, as we were on this call with 40 or 50 teachers. You know, the thing I was focusing on was, man, look at all the great teachers you get to see and witness and observe, right? When you're in the real world, you don't get to do that, right? As an undergrad, you go do all this stuff, but then when you're out in the real world, you don't get to peer observations and things like that, where all of a sudden, because of COVID, you're seeing a lot of great teachers present quality instruction. And so I was like, share that stuff, beg, borrow, and steal. And he said, but hold up. The relationship as PE teachers and health teachers that we built with our students, they need to hear your voice.
Yep.
They need to hear your impact. So you can do the same, right? Somebody can say the exact same thing I do, or the same exact thing Christy and Megan do, but it's their relationship with those students is what matters. And so for all of us, I think virtual learning and digital learning is a part of our future. And so doing things like this to know, to think about, to process, and to make us all better teachers. And at the end of the day, it's impacting the kids that you've been entrusted with to make a difference in their life.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. All right, Lauren. That
All right.
time.
So first of all, thank you guys, all the panelists, so much, and all of your great insight. And everybody on this call, if you guys could just take a moment and put your top takeaway of today's webinar in the chat box. This helps us so much, and we love hearing feedback from you guys, and helps us kind of gear it towards what you guys want to hear more about and different things like that. So if you guys could just take a moment and add your key takeaway of today in the chat box. And while you're doing that, Guy, you can go ahead and close us out here.
Yep. All right, guys. So we want to say thanks. What we're going to be doing in just a second, we're going to be shutting down the recording. We want to thank you guys for attending. Next week, we actually have a surprise. We're actually going to be continuing this conversation, but with some people who have actually been able to turn their shows into some more opportunities, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's even going in from, you'll hear one story of someone that goes from having a Facebook Live show to now getting ready to pilot launch a TV show. You also hear some stories about people that have been doing this for quite some time and the impact that they're having. So next week, we're going to be highlighting people from all the way from California to Missouri, all the way out to New York. We've got a very special show planned for you guys next week. And we're going to go ahead and release those names on Tuesday so you guys can see our lineup. But you don't want to miss next week, because we're going to continue this conversation and highlighting some other shows outside of what we're doing in our state, so that you can, just again, continue this particular, conversation, because there's so much to unpack with this. So with that, if you want to contact us, guys, you can see our contact. And if you do host a show and you want to be considered for an upcoming episode, just send me a direct message on Twitter, and I will get back to you. I don't know if Gary's still on the call or not, but Gary's a great example. The executive director from Indiana reached out. We talked just a few weeks ago, connected, and had a lot of things happen in the last 2 weeks. So again, just feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to hear from you so that we can get you planned into some future episodes. So with that, Lauren, why don't you take us to the Q&A? Go ahead and stop the recording.